Hello and welcome to this class of Principles of Microeconomics. I am your teacher, Muhammad Nadeem Sarwar. Today, we shall start our discussion on demand theory. This is our first lecture on this topic. In this lecture, we shall discuss what is demand, what is law of demand, and then we shall study this law with the help of table and diagram. We shall also discuss the difference between movement along a demand curve and shifting of a demand curve. So let's start with the lecture. Students, in our ordinary life, the desire and demand, both words are used simultaneously in almost similar meanings. However, in economics, demand means something more than desire. In economics, demand means the desire along with the purchasing power. For example, if I have 5 lakh rupees with me and I want to buy a piece of land worth rupees 7 lakh, then I have the desire to buy that piece of land, but I do not have the purchasing power to buy it. So, saying that I have the demand for this plot may be fine in our ordinary life, but in economics, this is wrong. Economics thinks that the demand will be when both of the conditions will met. That is, I must have the desire to acquire that commodity and I must have the financial resources to buy that commodity. Therefore, in economics, demand refers to various quantities of a commodity that a person is willing and able to buy at different prices within a given period of time. That is, demand refers both willingness and ability to purchase a commodity, and it shows how much quantity of that commodity will be purchased at various prices within a given time period. So, demand is normally linked to the enjoyment or usefulness of the commodity. This ability of a commodity to fulfill our want or need and give us the joy or being useful for us is called as its utility. The more utility a commodity gives, the more valuable it is considered, and hence the person will be willing to pay more for it. Keeping this in mind, we can say that the demand for a commodity depends upon its price, price of the related commodities, income of the consumer, consumers' expectations about future prices and future income, season, taste, fashion, and so many other things. Now, let's come to the law of demand. Law of demand says that when price of something increases, its quantity demand decreases and vice versa, while other things remain the same. That is, the law of demand represents the negative relation between price of a commodity and the quantity of that commodity being demanded, while we keep all other factors, that is, income, price of related commodities, future expectations, season, taste, etc., fixed. So, according to law of demand, we can write it as quantity demand is a function of price, and mathematically we can express this as QD equal to A minus BP. Here, the minus sign shows the relationship between quantity demand and price, while B is the slope of demand curve, or it represents how much the quantity demand will change with a change of 1 unit in price. Let's understand it with the help of a table. Let's assume that the price of gasoline was rupees 100. The consumers assume that this price is very high. Therefore, they did not buy any quantity of this commodity at this price. When price decreased to 80, the quantity demand increased to 5. Price further decreased to 60. The quantity demand responded by increasing to 12 and so on. Representing quantity demand on x-axis and price on y-axis. Joining these points, we have a downward sloping or a left to right falling curve, which is called as demand curve. Each point on the demand curve shows the quantity that consumer will demand at given price. Now the question is why demand curve has negative slope or why the demand curve falls from left to right. Students, the important reasons for the demand curve to be negative slope are number one, income or purchasing power effect. When the price of something increases, it decreases consumers' purchasing power, and purchasing power is given the name of real income. At low real income, consumers' ability to buy a commodity decreases. Next is substitution effect. When the price of something goes up, its substitute items feel relatively cheaper. Therefore, some consumers stop buying this commodity and switch to the substitute products. Hence, its demand falls. Next is the diminishing marginal utility. The diminishing marginal utility principle says that as you go on consuming a commodity, the extra utility you derive or extra satisfaction you derive from each unit of commodity goes on to decrease. Therefore, consumers' willingness to buy other unit of a good, second, third, fourth, fifth unit of a good will go on decreasing. Hence, consumer will only buy higher amount of a commodity or greater amount of a commodity when it is given at lower price. Next, we discuss some other properties of demand curve. Students, there are two notable facts. One, that demand curve touches y-axis. This shows that if the price goes above this level, which is 45 in our example, the consumers will not buy any quantity of the good. Why this is so? Because the consumer thinks that the value or the utility that first unit of gasoline gives is lesser than the amount he is paying. Next is that there is a certain value at x-axis which is represented by the intersection on x-axis, which shows that even if the price of this commodity falls to 0, its maximum demand will be 100. Why consumer is not demanding then this quantity here in example? Because the consumer also has little or scarce time. So, a consumer who is using gasoline to drive a car will also have to do other work. Therefore, he cannot drive the car for whole 24 hours in whole his life. This scarcity of time and doing so many other things, performing so many other tasks, will enforce him to stop using gasoline after a certain quantity is consumed. Next, we differentiate between changes in quantity demand and changes in demand. Students, if price of something goes up, its quantity demand decreases. Whereas if price of related goods, income, expectation, season, taste, or a change in any other factor enforces quantity demand to fall, we do not say this as change in quantity demand. Instead, we say it as change in demand. So, making things simpler, change in quantity demand is when this change is because of change in price of that commodity. While if there is a change in quantity demand due to any other factor other than price, we say it is change in demand. On a graph, change in demand, that is a change in quantity demand which is induced because of change in factors other than the price of the commodity, is represented by shifting the demand curve. An increase will cause the demand curve to shift to right and decrease will cause it to shift to left. Whereas if the quantity demand is changing in response to change in price of that commodity, we call it change in quantity demand, and on the graph we represent it by moving along the same demand curve. Here, when the price decreases, the quantity demand increases, that is, the demand curve extends. And when price increases, the quantity demand decreases, that is, the demand curve contracts. However, we remain on same demand curve. Whereas an increase in income or any other factor that causes the demand for good to increase will result in shifting the demand curve to right or decrease will result in shifting it to left. Now let's study what are the other determinants that affect the demand of any commodity and result in shifting the demand curve to right or left. First one is the income or wealth. Income is a flow variable. It is the sum of households' wages, salary, profit, interest payment, rent, and all other earnings in a given time period. Whereas wealth or net worth is a stock variable which shows the total value of all the assets that a household possesses minus the total value of whatever it has to repay to others. An increase in income or wealth causes the demand to change. For this, we can categorize goods in two forms or in two categories. First is normal good. Normal goods are those whose demand increase when there is an increase in income. For example, a family that has one car After an increase in income, may like to have two cars. There are some other goods which are called as inferior goods. These are the goods which are demanded less when the income increases. For example, a poor family may daily eat home cooked food, but when their income rises, they may go to a restaurant once in a month. Therefore, the demand for home cooked food will decrease for this family, and the home cooked food will be inferior good for this family. Next determinant is the price of other goods and services. Students, there are some goods that are related to each other in one way or other. When the price of any such good increases, it affects the demand for related commodities as well. We can categorize such goods in two classes, one substitute and other complements. Substitutes are those goods which are same in use. Therefore, when the price of one of the good will increase, the consumer will find the other good relatively cheaper. Therefore, they will switch to the other commodity. Next are the complements. Complements are those goods which are used together. For example, socks and shoes, ball and bat, etc. When the price of one of such commodity increases, its demand decreases, which causes a decrease in demand of its complement as well. Next is the taste and preferences. If consumer like to consume a good more than some other good, then the decrease in price may not affect the quantity demand of the commodity that consumer likes more. Similarly, expectations about future. If there is a decrease in price, but consumer expect a further decrease in near future, they may not increase the quantity demanded immediately and may wait for a further decline. Similarly, if the price of some good increased and consumer expect it to increase more in future, they may even start buying it in higher quantity after first time increase in the price because they know they will have to buy this good at even higher prices in near future. Now from household demand to market demand. Market demand is the sum of all the quantities of good or service demanded per period by all the households in particular market. Therefore, market demand curve is horizontal summation of the demand curve of all the consumers in a market. Here at price 1, consumer 1 demands 2 unit of commodity, consumer 2 demands 1 unit of commodity. Therefore, total demand will be 3 units. When the price increases to 2, consumer 1 demands 1 unit of that commodity, whereas consumer two's demand falls to 0. Therefore, total demand at this price will be 1. When the price further increased to 3, consumer one's demand also fell to 0. Therefore, total demand in this case will be 0. That's all for this lecture. Please post your comments and give your feedback in comments. Thank you and goodbye.